Big 10 Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network. Hello and good morning. Welcome to Big 10 Plus 4. We bring you college sports with Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I am Sam Sprunger. Normally it's Dalton Shetler saying hello, but as we've gotten used to, Tony, he's not here on Fridays because I don't know. He's a pretty busy man. But on that other side of the screen is Tony Hollinsworth.
Yeah, how's you doing this morning, Sam? Yeah, I know. I still wonder where Dalton gets all these vacation days, man. Like he's always got vacation day. Like have you ever met that one coworker you always feel like has time off, and you're like, how do you have PTO still? Like you're gone all the time.
I'm a teacher, and there were times I work at home now, but I used to work in school buildings and stuff, and there were teachers that were there for years, and they had over 100 sick days built in, and I'm like, where? How? No, what? I'm sorry. I personally am a firm believer in if you've got it off, take the time during the year, because you know what, sanity is very important.
Yeah, but I mean, in their defense, because I mean, that's kind of what I did for the end of my time in the military. There was a time for like 2 years, I didn't take any time off. So I ended up getting 60 days of paid vacation, and I just kept it in the bank constantly.
Well, there are professions in which you can carry over those days. Now, like for those teachers that had 100+ days, if they were to retire at that point with that many, they'd only get paid for like 40 of them. So I'm like, no.
That's what I was thinking.
You hit that ceiling, you just go ahead and take those days off. You know what I mean?
I say now that's kind of what I did. So like my thought process would be, if I can't take them all like early in conjunction with my retirement, then the year that I'm retiring, oh yeah, I'm taking like couple 2-3 week vacations throughout the year.
Well, I know there were a couple of teachers who retired during the time that I was working. They were in kind of the similar, they announced at the beginning of the year that was their last year or whatever, and through conversation. And I apologize, I've got a little bit of a cold that I'm dealing with around the Springer household. But we would, they'd say, I have like 150 days. I'm like, so are you taking like the whole year off? Because the year's like 180 days. I'd be like, yeah, I'd make sure either every Friday I didn't work, or something.
Every Friday, Monday.
Here's the thing. Tell me I can't do it. They're my days, I'm setting it up, and I understand that, for teachers, and I know this is not at all our topics, but as teachers, you can set it up to where maybe it is suitable to where that sub can take over those days. So, and I guess this kind of fits because we've got a lot of coaches that are interim coaches for bowl games and things like that because of, coaches leaving and going elsewhere. One of them I wanted to bring up to you because we brought it up in text a few days before the hire was made, when Purdue was looking, and we'll talk more in depth after the half about the hires that have been made in the Big Ten. But I was I said it in jest, but yet at the same time kind of thought it through and thought, hey, this isn't really a horrible idea. But Purdue found Ryan Walters, and we'll talk about that hire itself down on the other side of the half. But Drew Brees is a special assistant coach for the Citrus Bowl. And I have a couple of trains of thought on this, Tony, but I want to get your take on it before I go ahead and take over.
I like it. I think it's cool not only because you get as a Purdue fan, you get probably one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever come from the school back. Oh, is you considering the? Okay.
Bob Greasy was really, really good. He was he's a Hall of Famer.
Then you had Lynn Dawson.
he is the last quarterback, which I'm getting there too. Which, he is the last quarterback to man an undefeated NFL team throughout a whole season.
Yep.
I think Drew Brees has had a better career than him.
Yeah.
Len Dawson, absolutely a treasure when it came to Purdue, then also really well in Kansas City. I do believe he's a Hall of Famer as well. If not, he's very close, or he should be in my mind, I guess. But still, just not that name. Bob Greasy took Purdue to the Rose Bowl, but I think overall body and kind of what he was at Purdue, Drew Brees is the best that they've had go through West Lafayette.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I think it's cool because I don't know. I know you said that you don't super pay a lot of attention to the NFL, but if you look at a lot of these NFL quarterbacks after they finish their career, a lot of times they go back really to the bare basics. They go back to high school. And I don't know
Trent
Dilfer, Phillip Rivers has also gone back.
Phillip Rivers has 48 kids, so he's going to be there for a while if he runs it through.
He's got his own football team, actually. He created his own.
He's got 12 or 13
line.
kids, so he has an entire starting football anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at Jeff Saturday. I mean, Jeff Saturday, the closest he had gotten to, really coaching was he was coaching a high school football team in Georgia up until the Colts called him. So for Drew, I think it's cool because he kind of skips that. And I think he's at that point where he's in just well enough of a transition. He hasn't been out of the game so long that, oh man, this is completely different than when I was in. So I have to kind of readjust to modern day coaching, modern day play style. Drew's only, a couple years removed from retiring. So he can come in, still get a good idea. I think he's still at that point where he's still relatable to a lot of the kids. Hey, I played with guys like you just a couple years ago. This is what they did, and can kind of offer a lot of pro insight to these kids. So I'm personally a big fan of it. I think it fits well for him. And depending on how well he does, I mean, obviously it can move it, into much bigger things moving forward. Who knows with how currently New Orleans is not getting too deep in the NFL. New Orleans may be like, hey, Drew, how would you like to be our head coach in a couple years? Just sliding the money out there.
I can envision a couple of things. And I think, this is totally him dipping his toes into the college football world to see if he wants to be a coach. And I'm not saying at the NFL level, because I think if that was the case, he would have been a positions coach by now. I think this is him deciding whether or not he wants to go the Deion Sanders route and become a head coach in college football. And I think it's great because of the aesthetics. It looks fantastic because Drew Brees is coming back to Purdue to do this. He's an special assistant, which means he can get into as much of the coaching as
he wants,
and as the coaches see fit. And it allows him to see not on the entire schedule or scale, but at least at a smaller scale, kind of what it entails to put together a game plan, put together the practices, running the practices, then getting that travel, and interacting with the team on the road as a coach, because, I've been on both sides as a player many moons ago, and then also coaching. I've been on road trips like that as both. So, and they're two different things. Coaches, kids don't understand a lot of what adults do because adults know that the kids don't need to know what all is done. So there's a lot of coaches are ducks a lot of times. On top of the water they look cool, calm, and collected, and underneath they're kicking like hell to stay afloat. And so I think this is a big step for him to decide whether or not he wants to coach in the college ranks. And honestly, Tony, I and this is a true feeling to me. I think it's him trying out for the Purdue staff for next year.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Because I mean, you kind of like you alluded to, when you go from being a player there's probably going to be some stuff that you miss. Now, as quarterback, you might have a little bit of that kind of special area where, you maybe see a little bit more just
Right.
because you're having to do more, you're having to lead more. You're, supposed to be an extension of the coach in a sense, depending on maybe how good you are. And I
There's a
think Drew
reason
is.
why many times quarterbacks are really good OCs.
Yeah. I mean, plus you look at, probably three of the best quarterbacks to do it, at least at the professional level, as far as being extension of coaches. Look at Peyton Manning. They called him the sheriff. Like,
Yep.
He decided, okay, this
Sheriff
is what
of
we're gonna
Omaha.
do. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do. Drew Brees, kind of the same thing. He was very cerebral in how he would dissect things. And he's like, nope,
Sure.
This is where I'm going to have you go. This is what I'm going to have you do. And then same with, unfortunately, as much as I hate to admit
Tom
this,
Brady.
Tom Brady.
For you.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, here's another thing I think, and a lot of people might scoff at this or laugh at me saying this. I think the fact that he's short helps his credit and
Yes.
and his validity, because he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He is a Super Bowl champion, and he is under 6 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
And he has been able to do that from the time that he was in West Lafayette. And Tony, let's talk about this just slightly. And this was no intention to make this a Drew Brees thing for the full first 10 minutes or so.
That's okay. I know what you wanted to do. It's
okay. But he wasn't highly recruited. He didn't eye Purdue from the time that he went into college. He was wanting to go to Texas. He was wanting to go to Oklahoma. He wanted to go to a big blue blood school in the area from which he lived.
Yep.
And the only school that gave him an offer at the time that he was ready to make a choice was Purdue. And he chose Purdue and Joe Tiller. And not that Purdue has a great history or a rich history, but that was the beginning of what Purdue is now compared to what they were in the 80s. And so he has a lot of pull in my mind to say, look, it doesn't matter who's giving you the offer. It's the fact that you're getting an offer and you put the effort in and bust your butt, and you can become a great athlete and potentially a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's not going to promise that, obviously, but he's going to have the gold blazer and the Super Bowl ring that he can walk in and go, you need to come to this college, be it Purdue, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those two, at least for Purdue, you're in a conference that is well known, and, eventually you're going to have pretty much an equal chance at really just anything.
Let's think about this too, Tony. What is Purdue?
I mean, really, they're a school that they have 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks?
Are the expectations high?
No.
If you win 8 games a year and go to a bowl game,
that's a good year.
You're going to have a pretty decent track record. And here's the thing. Nobody wants to not make it to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Nobody doesn't want to not win a championship, but you kind of know your lane for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at Purdue. And this is not me making excuses for my team. This is what Purdue's lane is in college football. They're never going to be a powerhouse. They might have years where they contend. They might have years that they get into the new playoff.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be a top 4 team. I think they stay with the CFP with the 4 teams. Purdue will never see that.
Yeah.
They might sniff a 12 team, but here's the thing. 8 wins a year, a bowl game, 10 wins every once in a while. That's a successful career at Purdue if you were to stay there 15 years like Joe Tiller did.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, really, you look at it, how Drew did, you look at it how Bob Greasy did, even same with Lynn Dawson. These are, like you said, all guys that weren't super highly touted coming out of high school. Yeah. They go to Purdue, they make a name for themselves, and then they also go on to make a career in the NFL. And I mean, we've seen a lot of guys do that. You don't necessarily, and even on the exact opposite end, look at some of these guys that come from the bigger schools that have reputations and have national championships. How much of that is the quarterback? How much of that is the actual team itself? Look at, for me, I always compare it to Alabama quarterbacks. Until an Alabama quarterback finishes their rookie contract on an NFL team, which none of them have yet to.
Mac Jones is getting close.
Mac Jones and Tua are the two closest. I don't believe in the Alabama system of quarterbacks because I'm like, no, you have first round talent around you all the time. You're a system quarterback. And for Drew, for all of them, they proved, hey, it's not the system. It is, if it is the system, I can work in it. And it proves that you don't necessarily have to go to one of those big schools. You don't have to go to a Texas. You don't have to go to Oklahoma. Like you said, you can go to Purdue. You have a little bit of expectations, but not enough that you're going to, be stressed and crippled down if you lose 1 or 2 games. Like you said, if you win 8, 9, 10 games and you go to a bowl game, that's a fantastic year. And that's still respectable. I mean,
you're always going to have critics too. So there's always going to be people, even when you win 10 games in a year, they're going to be like, oh, they should have won 12. They should be 11-1. Now, you know what? Understand what Purdue is, and I'm not talking just Purdue in this aspect necessarily. It's those middle of the road conference schools that don't always contend. Iowa State.
Yep.
They have good teams. They can beat some big teams, but they don't compete for a conference championship all the time.
Yep.
They're in contention for it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not always competing one-on-one for it in the championship game. I don't even know if they've been to it. The Big 12 championship maybe once in the history of it that I can remember, but not very. But those are the teams I'm talking about. And I've honestly the whole comment of after Jeff Brom left and we made this comment or conversation, is Louisville a step up? Many would contend it is, just for the aspect of what that conference is going to look like in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Purdue's conference, and we will talk about this just on the other side after I introduce it, Purdue's conference is getting a heck of a lot harder in 2 years. So after this season and then next season, it becomes extremely difficult with what their conference looks like. So there's a lot of people that would say Louisville is a move up, but I contend that they're both middle of the road schools that, you can have good seasons, you can contend, but you're not going to contend year in and year out with those major monsters. Purdue's not going to contend every year with Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah.
They might occasionally, but they're not going to every year. Just like Louisville is not going to contend with Clemson every year.
Yeah.
And North Carolina.
And to let you know, Iowa State has been to the Big 12 championship once. It was in 2020. Okay. They're ranked number 8th nationally. And
yes, I remember.
Oklahoma 27-21. So
I was going to say
it was competitive.
But here's the thing. That's the one time.
That's the only time they've been.
And that's what I'm getting at is they're very much like Purdue in the aspect of they're just kind of middle of the road. They'll beat some teams notably, but they're not going to contend year in and year out, and probably not make it to the championship game much more than contending every once in a while. So let's move to the second quarter. Let's talk some stuff.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I believe it was Thursday, correct? That the UC Board of Regents, the University of California Board of Regents, did approve UCLA to make the move in 2024 to the Big Ten Conference. There was a lot of contention that the UC Board of Regents could block this, and they could have. They absolutely could have. Yeah. But I think there were thoughts that it was going to be a moot point, maybe. Honestly, there's probably even some inner talkings that maybe even Cal is still going to end up in the Big Ten at some point, because that was the major hiccup or the major roadblock for the UC board. It was UCLA and Cal are both UC schools. They're part of the University of California board or grouping of universities. It's kind of like Purdue and Indiana did a bunch in Indiana with like IPFW and IUPUI but those have now been divided. One's going to be IU Indy, I think, and then you've got Purdue of Fort Wayne.
Yeah,
but that's not my point. It's they have that conglomerate to where they're always doing stuff together. because they're both schools that are supported by the same state structure and whatnot.
Yep.
But the UC Board of Regents, Cal and UCLA are both of the same. And in their agreement being in the Pac-12, they have to play each other. Or actually, I believe it's their agreement that they have to play another UC team, I guess, every year. And Cal, obviously, being in the Pac-12, was there. That was the hurdle, is Cal going to keep UCLA from moving to the Big Ten? And I believe there was an agreement of some sort that there's going to be some monetary compensation.
There was. I found that actually. So the University of California's Board of Regents voted 11-5 to approve UCLA's move.
So it
to
wasn't
the Big Ten.
As convincing as it could have been.
No. The catch is that some of the money UCLA will receive from being a part of the Big Ten will have to go to Cal. The UC Regents approved a subsidy in the range of $2 to $10 million for Cal.
That's to not play UCLA.
Yeah. Yeah, to not play UCLA.
They don't have to play UCLA to get, you got those teams that get big paydays for going to play teams. Yeah. Cal gets it for not playing UCLA.
Well, and I'll be honest, when we first heard that there was that potential block from the university, Board of Regents, to me, because of how unexpectedly this came through, you really think a school like UCLA probably didn't have their lawyers on hand when they even first thought about this. Like, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Can you guys do some digging? What can we do? What can't we do? And because they have to assume the worst of hey, what happens if we get blocked? What can we already have prepared, ready to go?
There was negotiations before this. When this was even brought up, I'm guessing when they announced that they were moving, they were already starting the negotiations towards what's it going to take to make sure the Regents pass us.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, because you think about it, and this is also how I looked at it. Once they signed the contract with the Big Ten, and especially after the Big Ten got that new media rights deal, including them, there was going to be a lot of legal backlash for really both if they didn't show up into the Big Ten. And I'd be willing to bet UCLA probably came to the Board of Regents and said, hey, we've already got this signed up. The Big Ten already has this. Again, we can negotiate, we can work this through, but this is going to happen. Otherwise, you're not just going to have our lawyers, you're going to have a bunch of other lawyers.
I'm also guessing there was a plan B in case it did get blocked. Probably. They had a third team ready to put into that almost immediately. I don't know who it would be. I don't want to even speculate. Honestly, I have my ideas, but other than short of Notre Dame, I mean, Notre Dame's always on the table, so that's not a shock. But I'm sure there was a pigeon or a earmarked team that they had ready to go.
Well, you think Notre Dame is one, and honestly, you think about it. What 4 or 5 months ago, they the Big Ten even entertained Washington and Oregon. So I think one of those two, they probably looked at it okay. If
I'm assuming it's one of those two.
That's what I would assume. Because it's okay, we'll get another Pac-12 team. Which one of these two would we really want? Who has kind of the caliber of sports teams that we want, and academically, who would we believe matches kind of our academic standards as well that we'd want to bring into the conference?
And honestly, from here on out, I don't see them adding odd-numbered teams in. So if down the road Notre Dame says, "Hey, by the way, we're coming," they're going to go find Oregon. They're going to go find Baylor. They're going to go find somebody that A, gives them a new state, or B, gives them a little bit more pull. And, we've talked about this. There ain't nobody really left other than Notre Dame that's going to move the needle. So
now I will say the only thing, kind of to your point of the odd numbers thing, if they get rid of divisions and they just make it one conference, I don't think they care.
I still don't think they add anything. I don't know that they didn't go very long with only 13 teams. They brought somebody in quickly to add in to make that, because I believe, maybe it was 12. I don't remember exactly the whole.
When they brought Penn State in?
Penn State, it was 11 for a really long time because the 11 was in the logo for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then they added, I think it was Nebraska then. So I just see them adding in even numbers now, because there are teams that are ready to jump ship and go places. And I think it's just a matter of getting that going. I wanted to also, Tony, This is going to take us into the halftime break because we want to talk about the new coaches in the Big Ten on the other side of halftime. Let's talk about the hypothetical. There, need to take that off. The hypothetical 24-team tournament that college football playoff edits has put out, because they put out what they're going to 12 teams starting not next year. There's one season of 4 teams left after this year. So next year, the 24-25 football season will be going to a 12 team. The college football playoff edits went out to 24. And I wanted to look at this and just look at these matchups, because if you look at this 24 team tournament, Tony, you see all 10 conference champions. Yep. We've talked about this just a little bit. How do you feel about the way this bracket were to look if it were real?
I mean, I like it, and I know we had talked about this before we started the show. This was something I actually wanted to bring up eventually on topic. I like it for a couple different reasons. One reason in particular, and then I'll move into what I kind of think about this for some of the matchups.
Yeah.
We've always talked about how currently right now with the college football playoffs, the way they're set up, the top 4 are really the only that matter. Depending on how good or how bad the season has gone, you could maybe argue, teams 1 through 7 are really some of the best teams. But then after that, you're not really worried about the 10th best team in the nation at that point. You're like, you're right in there, you're number 10, but you're not really a scary number 10. Like, and to me, if they were to do something like this, it makes the top 25 more valuable, because you think about it, there's 133 college programs in Division I football. You mean to tell
It'd
me
be FBS?
Yeah. So
They've
you mean
changed
to tell me
to the alphabet soup? Remember,
right? That only about 1/5 of your schools you consider in the top 25. Really, that doesn't matter. Like, only your top 4 teams, as it stands right now, are the ones that matter. Like, this would make being in the top 25 actually mean something, as compared to, oh, hey, you're number 22. Awesome, you're ranked number 22. Doesn't mean anything though.
Doesn't mean much.
Yeah. So I like it. I think I think it's really cool that you'd have all 10 conferences represented. You've got the Central USA, you've got the AAC, the Mountain West, the MAC, the Sun Belt.
USA.
Huh?
It's actually Conference USA.
Conference USA, CUSA, whatever.
Yeah, but you said Central USA. It's not Central. Yeah. It's
Did I say Central? My bad. Yeah.
You did. That's why I corrected you.
My bad. But it is cool that basically all of these conferences, and kind of like you alluded to before we started, it would make winning your championship for your conference also matter. Because look at all these Group 5 schools. The last one that we even saw do really break boundaries of even getting into the 4-team college playoffs was Cincinnati, and it was like a fight to get them into the college football playoff.
We weren't talking about Toledo this year at all for the playoff.
No,
in this scenario here. They're in.
Yeah, and they're facing the Big 12.
Right.
And really, it's what would be a good matchup. And I mean, you look at that, and then they have to go on and face Utah. That would be awesome. You could potentially have a repeat of the SEC championship with LSU versus Georgia. And then you get an even better matchup. You may have Utah versus Georgia, which I think that would be
insane. Awesome. Would the Bayou be with Tulane and LSU playing in that first round?
Crazy.
Right there. Right there, going against each other in New Orleans. And they're both, well, it could be Baton Rouge. I honestly would, because this is saying the first and second round, the higher seeds get the home field advantage. I contend that if it goes into New Orleans, that's not an advantage. Oh, well, I'm sorry. It would be there, because it wouldn't. LSU's the lower seed. My dumb, stupid head there. Jeez. So, yeah, how crazy would the Superdome be?
Oh, it'd be nuts.
Because it would be at least half and half, if not a little bit more towards LSU, because LSU travels really well. Some of these matchups, you've got a Big 12 game for a first-round game. Oregon and UCLA. Think that would be a good game. The one that intrigues me, if you look down the lower right here, not this one, not 1914 necessarily, the winner going in against TCU.
Yeah.
Because both of those teams can play.
Yes.
Oregon State is markedly better than what they have been in the past.
And they beat Oregon this year. That's
they
what
beat Oregon.
And
Tony, they beat Oregon after being down 21 points in the second half.
Yeah.
They also lost on I believe a last second field goal or a 2-point conversion against USC.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is a good team that's sitting down there at 14. I think that the winner of this game would at least push TCU in that next round.
Well, and I'll be honest, if you look at 19 versus 14 right now, especially with the way, South Carolina has played, how they, destroyed Tennessee. They come in, they, beat Clemson and upset Clemson. That would be a good game within itself. And then, like you said, they move on to face TCU, which either one of those, if they win, would be a fantastic game against TCU.
Tennessee, Florida State would be a good one, especially with the winner going to Columbus. That would be intriguing to watch those two and then have that winner go into Columbus. That would be a good matchup. Yeah. I'm not as intrigued by this one to go in and play against Alabama, but Alabama is having a down year. I honestly don't see anybody beating Georgia until we get to this national semifinals anyway.
So real quick, we talked about this, like early in the show this season. You remember how Nick Saban said last year was a rebuild year? So what is this?
What is this year?
Yeah, what is this year?
Oh, he's gonna have something. It won't happen until springtime,
of course,
next year.
After spring football, then
he'll start talking about what happened this year, and maybe we should start a pool to see. Excuse me, what he says about that.
Yes, let's please do it.
So, okay, well, this is just like again, it's one of those that it's just a fun thing to talk about and to kind of see, because honestly, Tony, don't know about you, but I could see this happening down the road.
Oh yeah,
expansion, and you're adding games, but you know what? You can eliminate 1, 2 of those preseason games that you schedule an FB or FCS team or a low rung FBS team that you're going to win against.
Yeah.
And eliminate that and make it to where you're playing back down to 11 games. I liked 11 games as a season because then you're not going to have that 6-6. You're either, and this it goes against what we've been talking about, where 5 and 7 was bowl eligible. It used to be you won 6 games, you became bowl eligible. And when you only had 11 games, Tony, there's no way you could end at 500. You either were bowl eligible or you weren't. There was a fine line. And then we expanded it out to 12 games, which again tells me also it ain't about the student athletes. It's about bringing in the cash. You don't expand the season out by one regular season game if it's not about that.
And I think if they move to a 2014 playoff like that, again, like we've talked about, you can either move the bowl games into the regular season and make them count, or kind of like this, hey, the Duke's Mayo Bowl could actually be a game worth something.
For sure. And honestly, I would see that. Honestly, they didn't add many more. There's only 6 games. The New Year's 6 are here, and that's it.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is those second round games as well. They're on campus as well. Nobody's going to host more than I guess I can't say that because I guess if you had a home game and you won, you're going to go into a game, you're the lower seed no matter what.
Yeah.
There's going to be, you're only going to host one game. So that's a reward for making the playoffs. If you're rewarded and you're better than the team you're playing, or if you've gotten the bye, you get a home game. I think that's beautiful. You bring in the college venues. You get those crowds that couldn't normally go to a semifinal bowl game. They can go on campus now. I still have not heard anybody. I've heard them say, "Oh, well, those first round games for the new playoff will be home." Home games for the. I still contend you make those bowl games and you give the ones that got the bye, the home game. That's more of a reward. Don't get me wrong. A bye is the reward as well.
Yep.
But come on, they're the 4 best teams in the country. Give them the bye, obviously, but then also give them a home game. They deserve that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like you said, look how much it would do for the campuses, for the universities, and honestly, look at some of these schools in this type of format. You
Right.
may have a Group 5 school that gets up there, and we'll take Tulane for example.
Tulane could beat LSU, if they played each other.
And how do you think Tulane would feel like, oh my God, we're not only in the playoffs, we're in a semifinal,
and we're hosting them bad boys. It's our game.
The campus would react.
Oh my goodness.
It would be ecstatic.
Now here's the one thing I would do if I was Tulane. We're playing at home. We're not going to the Superdome.
To what?
They're playing at home. They're not going to the Superdome. They're playing at Tulane, like on campus.
Yeah.
Don't play it in the Superdome because that allows LSU to fill it with more fans. No. We'll give you the whatever, the 20% of capacity allotment or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're taking the rest of it. There's 4,500 people there, and there's 400 to LSU
Tulane
fans, and the rest are Tulane fans.
Right? Hey, that's what it is.
Well, it's interesting to look at the tournament that they've got because it lends to what I think could happen. I mean, UTSA. You're never expecting San Antonio, the Roadrunners, to make it into the playoff ever.
No. Now they had a good year last year. Now this year, not as much.
But at the same time, they had their good year last year when Cincinnati was making their run.
Yep.
And so it's one of those that they're kind of I guess CUSA is the Purdue of conferences. Maybe they'll occasionally contend and get into contention, but they're not going to compete every year. Whereas an expanded playoff might do that for them. So, All right. Well, what do you think? You think we should move on to halftime and start talking some coaches hirings?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Let's hit the half.
You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Hi, I'm Tina Jaramillo.
And I'm Hillary Doherty.
And we host the Muck Podcast, where we discuss the dark and sometimes weird true stories in American politics.
Hey, Tina, did you know that Elvis crashed the Nixon White House for the sole purpose of getting a DEA badge, and it worked?
What? Or how a gun control advocate senator out of California engaged in gun trafficking with notorious gang leader Shrimp Boy?
Shrimp Boy, I remember him. Okay, so, we cover all of that and more from maladies, madness, mischief, and murder in U.S. politics.
And we also host a bi-weekly interview segment called Lil Muck.
We interview politicians, journalists, activists, and others who share their experiences in politics.
Find the Muck Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out on social media at the Muck Podcast.
That is the whistle for the third quarter. This week we are having headlines, so this is going to be a conversation that we've been wanting to have, and we thought maybe that we would have one of our buddies come in and be able to talk about them, but some things came up to where I'm not sure he's going to make it. But the Big Ten has hired three Big Ten schools have hired new head coaches, and we're going to talk about them kind of in the order in which that they were hired. I guess fired, and then the hirings came, fired or moved on, I guess, because not all three of them were fired either. But Nebraska, they replaced Scott Frost in the middle of the season with interim coach, Mickey Joseph.
Yep.
And Honestly, I didn't think Mickey Joseph did a horrible job while he was coaching, but there were some things that obviously came up after everything was done that he wasn't an option. But they went and hired Matt Rhule, and Matt Rhule, really good coach at Temple.
Yep.
He then did move to Baylor, got Baylor back on track, because I don't know if you remember, after RG3, Baylor kind of
fell off.
Baylor went into a big hole and just wasn't performing. Matt Rhule came into town and absolutely turned Waco and Baylor around to where they were contending for titles. Baylor won or contended for the Big 12 last year. I mean, Matt Rhule made an impression in Baylor. He then went to Carolina. It didn't go well in Carolina.
No.
You have those. You take gambles, and you always, when you're looking for a coach, you always look for that hot prospect, and sometimes you really hit, and other times you're not successful. And Matt Rhule didn't work out in Carolina, so he was let go in the middle of this season. And Nebraska picked him right up and placed him into Lincoln. He is the new Cornhusker coach. What are your thoughts on Matt Rhule?
Yeah, I mean, they did it really quick. I think that was one of the first hirings that happened too. Was Nebraska was like, "Ooh, Matt Rhule, yoink!" As soon as we can, yoink.
Yeah.
He's
as soon as the season was over. It was like a day or so after they beat Iowa. They had Matt, or no, I think it was right before they played Iowa that they hired him.
Yeah.
So they didn't wait.
No,
I think that might have been, though. Maybe their decision was made a lot easier because they probably knew about the Mickey Joseph situation before it came out.
Yeah.
These things don't surprise the people involved when they're released to the media. They already know about it. It's kind of like when somebody passes away in a car wreck or something. If they haven't notified the family, they don't put the name in the paper.
Nope.
And that's because those people need to know first. So these aren't surprises to people when they come out to the media.
Yeah. As far as the overall hiring itself, I'm very if on this, and I say that not because he hasn't been successful in college. I'm saying that as an NFL fan, having watched him.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago too, or about a week ago too.
Yeah, I always get skeptical because it's one of those, I've seen coaches be really successful and then they go into the next level, they're terrible. Well, then they're like, okay, well, I'll come back, and for example, you take Chip Kelly. Look how long it took Chip Kelly to rebound after making Oregon a powerhouse, goes to the NFL, really had success in the NFL with at least the Eagles, went to the 49ers, not as much. Then he goes to UCLA. For a while there, it's like, Chip Kelly might be on the hot seat. Now UCLA is back. I think he kind of got back into his rhythm. I think he got a good support system finally back around him again. And I think he probably had to do a little bit of soul searching as far as, revitalizing himself for the coaching aspect. Is Matt Rhule going to be in the same way? And, if I'm Nebraska, how long am I willing to wait for it? Because they had Scott Frost for 4 seasons? If I remember right,
this was his fifth.
Yeah, going into his fifth, I think. Yeah,
it may have been his fourth, but I thought it was his fifth. But go ahead.
Yeah, but nonetheless, though, it really kind of makes me wonder: is Matt Rhule going to have that same potential track record of you did really well in college, you didn't do so well in the NFL? Now, how are you going to do back into the college system?
This was his fourth season, by the way.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. See, I was like, I thought it was like 2018.
2018 is when he got hired, and then he was obviously let go in 24 or 22. So
yeah, so I thought so, but yeah, I'm still kind of iffy on it. I really don't. I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Excuse me. I think this is honestly, this could be. This is a move to me that has no consequences other than it's an 8-year deal and you're paying money. Because let's think about what Nebraska is currently. We're not going to go back to the blue blood, the history, the national titles. We're talking about what Nebraska is right now. Okay. They're a dumpster fire with a little less flame. They're still in shambles or whatever. So Why not take a flyer on a guy that couldn't cut it in the pros but did really well in college?
Yeah.
You know what? Because this is a gamble that, you know what? It's never Scott Frost, we thought, was the one.
Mhm.
Nebraska was in love. They were all in. They thought he was the one. It's time for a rebound. And if the rebound doesn't work, guess what? Matt Rhule is going to make a ton of money because Nebraska will buy them out or buy him out if it doesn't work out. But if he hits big, guess what? Nebraska's a power again. Or at least a semblance of what they had used to be back in the 90s and the 80s.
They're at least in contention.
And he got to do it at a blue blood, a historically blue blood school without having to work his way back to that level. Let's think about that. He starts winning at Nebraska. He's got one of the top jobs in the country. Like that's what we're looking at, is if he starts winning in Nebraska, all of a sudden he's got one of the best jobs in the country. It's that's not up for debate either, because Nebraskans are fanatic about one thing, and that's Cornhusker football.
Yep, Big Red football.
So if they start winning, he is all of a sudden one of America's best coaches, not necessarily in everybody's, but he's one of America's best coaches in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Their eyes have him as the best.
And I do think that he has the potential for it, because I mean, you look at Nebraska, heck, you look at everybody that transferred in. I was looking at some of the names, I was like, wow. So it does still show that there is something about Nebraska that still kind of brings people there.
Well, there's one thing about Nebraska, and that's their name. Historically, you still say Nebraska, and you're like, oh yeah, they were good.
Yeah, they were.
That's all. If he starts winning, let's say he goes 6-6 next year, people are going to go, oh well, we improved.
Yeah.
The year after that, he goes 8-4.
Yeah,
we're getting better. We're contending. Oh well, USC and everything starting to get in their flow. Oh shoot. Okay, so if he treaded water and won 8 games for 2 straight years, I think people would be like, all right, we're in the right direction. For what Nebraska has been, and for the amount of patience they showed Scott Frost, I think Nebraska is just hungry for winning seasons. They're hungry for bowl games, and once they start getting those, that's when they up their and ramp up their expectations of, okay, now it's time to start winning.
Yeah. I mean, really, off the top of my head, you look at probably one of their last really good seasons they've had. It was like 2012, and they went 10-4, and they were 7-1, and in the Big Ten.
That's when they went to the Big Ten championship game, I believe.
Yeah, and they lost to Wisconsin when it was the Legends division, and that
was before East and West happened. It was Legends and leaders,
and that's when they got destroyed by Wisconsin because they lost 70-31,
and that's a regulation game.
Yes.
Whoever had the over 101, you're lying.
Yeah, they did. If they didn't, there's no way. There's no. They'd have made so much money if they got the over under.
So let's move over to then also, and we've got to kind of pick it up a little quicker. I guess maybe we'll talk about the other two next week. You want to do that, because let's. So Matt Rhule was this week. Next week we're going to talk. Actually, we'll talk about one of them, unless we can get our guest that we will effort again. We'll talk about at least the Luke Fickell hire, and maybe the Luke Fickell and Ryan Walters hire next week, because there's some thought process on that too, on both of those, and I've seen some criticisms and some praises for both of those to be hired. So there is room for some conversation on that as well. And I just realized I didn't upload Dalton's. I've got it on video. Sorry. I just did a producer thing in my head while I was sitting here going, oh shoot, we're going to headlines. I don't have Dalton's up, but I know exactly where it's at, so I'm okay. Let's move to the fourth quarter. All right, we have our headlines every Friday. Every Friday, we pick out a topic or an article that caught our eyes or some conversation or topic that we wanted to bring into our newspapers. And as per usual, Tony, as per usual, you get to kick us off with the Tony Tribune.
I know I wasn't exactly prepared for this because I completely forgot that we typically do headlines on today. So I am a terrible co-host for doing that. Yeah, I don't really have anything at the current moment. I am looking so hard and so fast right
are
now. I
you
know.
telling me I should do Dalton's? Is that what you're telling me?
You can do Dalton's first.
All right,
That way mine can be fast.
We'll go ahead and do Dalton's Dalton Daily. Let me get that set up since I was setting it up while you were talking. That's what my plan was anyways. So let's go ahead and add Dalton in. We're going to go ahead and jump out and let Dalton take over. Can you hear that, Tony?
Not at all.
Yeah, that's what I worried. This is why I need to do better preparation here. I forgot to click a little button, a little box. I knew exactly what I was doing when once I hit play, I was like, oh, that's not going to go. So let's try it again. Let's see if we can hear it this time.
Let's do it.
I shared audio. Well, isn't this just a wonderful time?
It is. Although I do have a headline now.
Oh, well, you know what? Let's try one more time with Dalton. Okay. Let's try one more time with Dalton and see if, because I can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's obviously because I'm okay, let's try it this way. Maybe. Oh, golly. Go ahead, Tony. Let's go with the Tony Tribune. I may have to release Dalton's separately.
Separately, yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
So obviously we saw all the awards finally come out. We saw that, Caleb Williams did end up winning the Heisman Trophy, which some people's maybe chagrin. Maybe he did deserve it. Maybe he didn't. I know me personally, I'm a little bit more of a Max Duggan fan because he literally carried that team on his back in the Big 12 championship game, but is what it is. There's another guy though, again, another Big Ten guy that actually got snubbed from a award, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr. got snubbed from the Fred Biletnikoff Award for the best wide receiver. That ended up going to Tennessee's Jalen Hyatt. But apparently he's not really fazed by it. He still believed that he had, probably one of the best seasons. He did feel that he deserved to win. He said congrats to Jalen. But he's got bigger and more important things to worry about. And he really does, because at the end of this, there's a potential Marvin Harrison Jr. could say, well, I'm a national champion. Not really worried about, winning a specific award for my position. And really that does kind of speak volumes to him. You don't always have to be the best wide receiver or the best person at your position. And, if I have to choose between being considered the best guy or winning a national championship ring and be considered one of the best guys, I'll take the ring and be considered one of the best guys. But that's just me.
Yeah, they're so subjective anymore. You know what I mean? These awards and stuff. It kind of matters who you know. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. I absolutely agree. He should have been nominated and should be a finalist for that award. He's if not a very top receiver in the game of football. And Max Duggan, I loved Caleb Williams's response. Mm-hmm. Hey, I may be standing up here right now, but you guys are all playing for the championship.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, I think it reiterates my point a little bit. Caleb would have rather been in the college football playoffs than probably
sure.
winning the Heisman. Now, he probably wants both. I mean, I don't
Sure.
blame you. I would want both.
Sure.
But if I had to pick, I'd be like, no, I'd rather compete for the championship than just winning this award.
Okay, so I got Dalton's up.
'Kay.
Let's listen to Dalton's after a couple of minutes of struggling to try to get his Dalton Daily up. I have been successful, so let's go ahead and listen to his 2.5 minute headline.
For the Dalton Daily, I wanted to take a look over in Iowa City because there was a really neat accomplishment that happened in Big Ten basketball with the Iowa Hawkeyes, not on the men's side, but on the women's side, where head coach Lisa Bluter, who's been there for, I think now in her 23rd season, 22nd season, she's been in Iowa since the early 2000s, just became the Big Ten's all-time winningest coach in Big Ten women's basketball history. Wow. Lisa Bluter knocked off Minnesota to get win 234 in Big Ten play just this past week. And that passed former Iowa head coach Vivian Stringer, who, of course, had a bunch of wins as a Hawkeye, then went to Rutgers and coached still in the Big Ten with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and recorded some more wins there. But 234, Lisa Bluter picked it up and now has more Big Ten conference wins than any other coach in history. And it's so great because I had a chance to talk with Lisa Bluter actually since that accomplishment and hearing her story. I mean, if you have not met the person Lisa Bluter or heard much from her, it's a very grounded human being, very, very in the moment, very grounded. I mean, she took time to explain that the origin story for her. She had no idea that coaching was something she wanted to do. She liked basketball. She played at UNI, Northern Iowa, and she was helping a neighbor, an 80-year-old neighbor. Her and her fiance, I believe at the time, were helping. And the neighbor came over and said, hey, there's something in the wanted ad about a basketball coach. What do you think? Well, okay, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. And now she's the all-time winningest coach in Big Ten women's basketball history when it comes to Big Ten games. She's in multiple Hall of Fames. She's arguably changed the game with how she allows players to play. Megan Gustafson was a big-time star just a handful of years ago. Caitlin Clark right now is maybe the face of women's basketball and certainly brings eyeballs to the TV whenever she's playing because she's the Steph Curry of the college women's basketball game. And a lot of that has to go with how Lisa allows things to operate. She's had the same starting five now for the last 3 years, has a great team in Iowa again this year. And I just wanted to take a moment to salute what is a monumental milestone and achievement for head coach Lisa Bluter over there in Iowa City.
So, yeah, so great things happening on the women's side of basketball. That's the nice thing is we've got a bunch happening on the men's side basketball-wise, a lot of football, but we've also got a lot going on the women's side that we can celebrate and talk about in the coming weeks. So let's go on to the Sam Sentinel, and it's going to be a quick one. It's just a talking legacy, Tony. People always want to kind of know or think about what their legacy is going to be. And I'm going to give you nine schools that lead to a legacy: Baylor, West Virginia, Louisiana Tech, TCU, Tennessee, Houston, the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL, USC, and Nevada. All 9 of those places have coaches that use the air raid offense, and that were all coaches underneath Coach Mike Leach. Those are some major schools. Those are some an NFL franchise that have used Mike Leach's offense to become successful and become coaches at the place that they are. Legacy is huge. Coaching tree is absolutely huge, and this just shows that Mike Leach has a huge reach. Even after he's gone, his name will carry on for years to come because of that air raid offense that he started, that he helped start with Coach Mummy at Kentucky. He will be missed. He absolutely will be missed. So, Tony, go ahead and give us the quick rundown of where to find us.
Okay, so you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Big Ten Plus 4. Unfortunately, you have to spell out the plus because spelling is hard and it's stupid. But luckily Facebook, you can put Big 10 plus 4. You can spell it plus or put it there. Either one, up to you. You can also find us on Odds Pods Media, along with a host of other great shows and other great podcasts with us. You can also find us twice a week on the ASAP Network live. And you can also catch us on Spotify if you want to see our actual faces and all the goofy stuff that we do on or off camera that we may or may not admit to. We plead
all
the fifth
right.
on that one.
From Sam Sprunger, Dalton Shetler on video, Tony Hollinsworth here at Big 10 plus 4. We appreciate it. And well, we'll see you later.
Bye.